So very good afternoon, students. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Very good afternoon. Can you see the slide? Can anyone reply? Can you see the slide? Am I audible? Please reply.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Let me see how many of them have joined. Okay. Students, in the earlier class, we were discussing about the team leadership. That was the use of teams in organization. Then some specific examples also we discussed in the previous class. Then majorly we understood the difference between group versus team, wherein what we understood was a team is a unit of interdependent individuals with some complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose and set of performance goals and to common expectations for which they hold themselves accountable, right? Wherein when we majorly spoke about group, we even understood one of the important difference between the team and the group. So team consists of members who tend to have a shared responsibilities, whereas groups are members, sometimes they work slightly more independently with the greater motivation to achieve personal goals. Then we even understood some of the key advantages of teamwork in the previous class. And see, this can be some of the important questions what we are discussing, some of the advantages as well as disadvantages of teamwork. Now, some of the major disadvantages what we discussed in the previous class was a common problem may be that members face pressure, to conform to group standards of performance and conduct. And a very important concept what we discussed was social laughing when it comes to disadvantages of teamwork. So social laughing, what we understood was is the conscious or unconscious tendency by some team members to shirk the responsibilities by withholding effort towards the group goals when they are not individually accountable for their work. See, another well-known disadvantage associated with highly cohesive groups or teams is groupthink. When we discussed in the previous class, we even know the meaning of groupthink. Groupthink is what? Is when the members of a cohesive group, they tend to agree on a decision not on the basis of its merit, but because they are less willing to risk a rejection for questioning a majority viewpoint or presenting a dissenting opinion. So what happens sometimes, though that there is a problem which is going to come up, but the other members in the team, or the other members who are working in the team, they simply keep quiet. They'll not object. So it might be because they are less willing to risk the rejection for questioning a majority viewpoint. So that might be one of the serious disadvantage of the teamwork, what we call it as group think. So till here, we understood in the previous class, we understood majorly the difference between the group and the team, and the advantages and the disadvantages of teamwork. Now in today's session, we'll be discussing about some of the major characteristics of effective teams, and we'll try to understand the types of teams, right? So all are with me, students? Students, are you understanding? Can you reply in the
Yes,
chat
sir.
box? Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. If you're
Yes, sir.
understanding.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I want to, I will be asking questions. You have to reply in the chat box. Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. So that I'll be knowing that the students will be, listening. Okay, done. I'll be proceeding with the characteristics of effective teams. Now, when we discuss about the characteristics of effective teams, first we'll try to understand what is effective team all about. See, effective teams are those that meet their performance targets. See, when I say performance targets, it can be in terms of quality, it can be in terms of productivity, it can be in terms of profitability to the organization, or a worker satisfaction and commitment, and even meeting the deadlines. See, the term effective is very important. Effective team. So, what we are trying to understand here is we are trying to understand the characteristics of effective teams. Okay. See, the first thing is effective. The team effectiveness is defined basically having three important major components. You can see the slide over there. The first one is called as task performance, and the second one is called as group process, and the third one is called as individual satisfaction. Students, the entire subject I'm referring to the book called as Lucia. He's fantastically given a lot of examples in this particular book. So all my materials, whatever you are seeing, is directly from the VTU prescribed book, and it is beautiful book. You have a lot of examples. So first, we'll try to understand the task performance. Now, the name only suggests the degree to which the team's output meets the needs and expectations of those who use it. That means the team is majorly concerned with the task, right? That is team's ultimate output, that is product or service, which meets the needs and expectations of those who use it. See, when I say those who use it, it is nothing but the customers or the end users is the right word. So what we are trying to understand here is the team effectiveness, which has got three major components. Okay. Next, the second one is called as group process. The degree to which members interact or relate in ways that allow the team to work increasingly well together over time. See, when I say a teamwork, a effective team, members in the team should positively work towards achieving the common objective. So the interaction between the team members should be very positive. So the suggestions should be taken in a very positive way, right? So then only the process can be completed within the deadline or within the stipulated time. Then only we can see the increase in the quality, the productivity and profitability, and we can meet our deadline. Okay. And the third characteristic of effective team, what we are trying to understand now, is called individual satisfaction. See, when I say individual satisfaction, it is the self satisfaction or the satisfaction to oneself. That is the degree to which the group experience on balance is more satisfying than frustrating to team members. See, whenever you are working in the team, there might be a lot of complexities, because everybody will not be working in the same attitude as you have, or everybody will not be working in the same enthusiasm as you have, or everybody in the team will not be working in the same energy level what you have. So you have to actually mingle with each and everybody and bring that positivity in everybody, so that the degree to which the group experience should be more satisfying. See, very important is when you are satisfied, you ensure that the group is satisfied, because you should not trouble your team members because of your bad attitude. So as you can see over there, the degree to which the experience on balance should be more satisfying than frustrating to the team members. See, when we speak about this, teams vary in terms of their effectiveness, and even satisfaction measures the team's ability to maintain employee commitment and enthusiasm for the team effort by meeting not just the team's goal, but also the personal needs of its members. Right? See, some are effective and some might not be not. See, for example, when I'm the team leader, and if 20 20 members are there in my particular team, I cannot expect everybody to be on the same work line, right? So some might be effective and some might not be effective. See, the obvious question therefore becomes, what makes one team successful and another team unsuccessful? So when a lot of literature review has been done on this, much of the literature portrays team effectiveness as a function of both internal and external factors. That is task, group and organization, design factors, environmental factors, internal and external processes, and group psychological characteristics. Okay? Then we will go to types of teams. This is one of the important part here to understand the various types of teams. So the first type, that is called as functional teams. So before going to the functional team, let me tell how exactly you can have a different types of teams, on what basis. See, structural metamorphosis seems to be one constant in organizational life today. Over the years, what has happened, students? What we are seeing now, we are seeing a lot of technology advancement which is happening in our day-to-day life. And why it is happening? Because of the competition which is there in the market. So you will be the competitor for your friend. And like that, if a company will come up with a product, automatically a competitor will be there for its product, right? See, because of this tough competition, what is happening is that is increasing competition stemming from the global and the technological nature of markets. This has forced the organizations to adopt different team types, right? Going from functional teams to cross-functional teams, and then to self-managed teams. We call them as SMT, self-managed teams. So we'll try to understand the various teams, how exactly they perform, and also we'll try to understand the advantages of each type of teams. Okay. So first we'll take functional team. Please see the slide over there for your understanding. I put whatever I'm saying. See, a functional team consists of a group of employees who are belonging to the same functional department. Please understand this. So when I say same functional department, I've mentioned over there, which includes marketing, or it can be research and development, production, or it can be HR, or it can be information systems, who have a common objective. So over time, what has happened, students? The drawback of this approach became evident as the workers suffered from boredom due to the repetitive nature of their jobs. So the structure of the functional team is generally more hierarchical. With what happens here, the functional leader making all the decisions and expecting his or her followers to implement them. See, every day you are going to the office and doing the same particular job or task. So what happens? One day is fine, 1 week is okay, and 1 month you will be bored. And after that, if the same thing continues, so you get frustrated because of the similar type of job what you are doing. So what normally people expect will be a challenging type of a task, right? Every day some challenges should be there and you have to overcome the challenges, then only you will be enjoying your job. But what happens here in case of functional team, the major drawback, as workers, they suffered from boredom due to the repetitive nature of their jobs. So another important drawback of this functional team is the tendency for a team member to focus on their local area of specialization and ignore the overall organizational mission. That means he'll not be knowing any other things. He'll be concentrating only to the local area, that is his domain area or his functional department. So this can lead to what? This can lead to a lack of cooperation between the functional groups, resulting in poor quality of decisions and overall organization performance. In fact, sometimes we have heard there could be rivalry rather than cooperation. Right. So a study examining the quality of the relationship between the research and development and the marketing in a functional organization structure, it found that interfunctional rivalry had the following consequences. It severely, what happens, the studies had been conducted and some of the results show that it severely reduced the R&D's use of information supplied by marketing personnel because of the rivalry between the two departments or between the two functional departments. And it lowered the perceived quality of information transferred between the two departments. And sometimes what might happen, it will increase the political pressure to ignore the useful information provided by the marketing department. So what happened was the use of functional structure over the years, students, because of all these drawbacks, what we understood, the use of this functional structure is in a declining phase, or already it has been declined. So please see my cursor here. The next type, what we'll be trying to understand here is the cross-functional teams, which became very popular somewhere in 1980s, when companies started to readjust their organizational structures to make them more flexible and even more competitive. So we'll try to understand the cross-functional team here. See, what happened was the major drawback of this functional team, all of you understood by this time. So in order to overcome that, so we had cross-functional team. That is, organizations are encountering complex and very dynamic external environments, which requires flexible and less hierarchical structures. Right? In today's organizations, completing tasks often requires cooperation across all the departments, such as all the functional areas, which includes marketing, R&D, operations, total quality management, supply chain management, right? So individuals are continually asked to cross functional boundaries and even form the teams with individuals of other functional disciplines for the purpose of accomplishing a common objective. So what do you understand by this cross-functional team? So the multifunctional team is composed of various members with different backgrounds, knowledge, experience, and even expertise, right? Who can solve problems and also they can help majorly in decision taking. So a cross-functional team is made up of members from various functional departments of an organization who are brought together on the common platform to perform a unique task and to create a new and a non-routine products or services. So by doing this, what happens, students? You will be aware of all the departments, all the functional departments, and you will be having a knowledge of almost all the departments because you will be directly involved with them, right? So team member may also include representatives from even outside the organizations, such as suppliers, clients. So the premise behind the cross-functional team concept is that the interaction, cooperation, and even coordination, information sharing among people from various functional areas, it actually produces what? Better quality products or services with shorter development cycles, correct? And communication is the medium through which team members share the information required for successful integration. So separate cross-functional teams may be formed in an organization for various activities, projects, or even customer groups. So what happens here is, as we are seeing with modern communication technology, which have come virtual, cross-functional teams. In particular, new and advanced technologies are providing the means for working that is, dispersed. So some of the major advantages of this, cross-functional teams we includes interaction, cooperation, as I mentioned to you, coordination, information sharing, and even cross fertilization of ideas. So a lot of idea exchange will happen from various functional areas, which actually results in producing the better quality products or services with the shorter development cycles. So that is one of the major key advantage of cross functional teams. And even cross functional teams charged with the developing innovative products or services or even new technologies. So it has very potentially benefit results. If you're working with the functional team, then you will be knowing only about your department. But when you're working with the cross functional team, so what happens, there is also the likelihood that individual team members may perceive the team's task differently, thus affecting the team's success. And even whatever points I've discussed, I've just put here, cross-functional benefits. It can be, see, as cross-functional team applications continue to grow, see, the question of what makes one team effective and another ineffective is of significant value to the researchers and companies. And some of the key benefits, bringing together the right people gives the team a rich and a diverse base of knowledge. So what happens here when I say right people with the right attitude, people with the positive attitude. So cross-functional teams typically have a team leader selected by a higher management. Then this team leader plays a very crucial role in cross-functional teams. What role? He or she can affect a team's effort, goal selection, and even goal attainment. The responsibilities of the cross-functional team leader includes ensuring that everyone has the same understanding of the team's objective. This is very important, students. Everyone in the team should be understanding the objective of that particular project and defining roles and deliverables upfront with each team member, negotiating with the team members' managers to establish the amount of time and other resources that members will give to the team, and dealing with all sorts of conflict. But here, in spite of all this understanding, we need to ask a question that whether, in spite of all these things, one team can be the team effective. What makes one team effective, another team ineffective? So research studies attempting to identify key factors responsible for ensuring success. In one study, students, researchers have interviewed 75 current and previous leaders of cross-functional teams in HP, which includes marketing, R&D, manufacturing, and information system units. And the interviews focused on identifying the factors that were critical to the optimal functioning of cross-functional teams. And in another study, a survey of frontline managers regarding the barriers and the gateways to management, cooperation, and teamwork revealed a consensus around 5 keys. So combining these two studies highlight, primary success traits of effective cross-functional teams. So cross-functional teams, if you understand the overall benefit to an organization, offer many potential benefits to an organization. So coordination is improved and many problems are avoided when people from different functions work together on a project at the same time, rather than working in a separate units. The cross-functional makeup of the team provides the advantages of multiple sources of communication, information, and even perspectives, provides contact outside one's functional specialty, and even provides speed to market. See, as I mentioned to you, when you have finished your whatever work is concerned, for you feel that whatever you have done is extraordinary. But when you discuss with your friends and when you show to your friends, there might be a lot of comments, improvement comments which they'll be giving to you. So you should be taking in a positive way and implement all those comments, whatever they have told you, so that your work will become great. So the positive synergy that occurs in effective teams can help them achieve a level of performance that exceeds the sum of the individual performances of the members. So cross-functional teams are often an organization's first step toward greater employee participation and even empowerment. And these teams may gradually evolve into self-managed teams, that is called as SMT. I'm repeating once again, self-managed teams, which represent a fundamental change in how work is organized. So next, after the two types what we have discussed, the first one was what? The functional team, and the second one was the cross-functional team. We'll try to understand the third type, that is called as SMT. What is that? Self-managed team. As the name only suggests, students, the self-managed teams are relatively autonomous. That means they can manage on their own. So what happens here? The teams whose members share or rotate the leadership responsibilities and hold themselves mutually responsible for a set of performance goals assigned by higher management. So what happens here? SMTs, they are usually cross-functional in membership makeup and have a wide latitude in decision areas such as managing themselves, planning and scheduling work, and even taking action on the problems. Students, today one of the biggest problem here is wherever we go, we expect someone to monitor us, we expect someone to correct us, we expect someone to tell us that okay, whatever you are doing is not correct, you should do in the correct way. We expect someone to give the deadlines, right? So if that is the case, then you cannot achieve. But these SMTs are concerned, that is self-managed teams. Within the team, the members, they set task goals for the specific areas of responsibility that support that support the achievement of overall team goals. And the amount of delegated authority varies from one organization to another. Just for an example, I want to tell you, in some organizations, the self-managed teams, SMTs may be given the primary responsibility for personal decisions such as selecting the team leader, hiring and firing the team members, and even the determining the compensation rates too. And in some organizations, such decisions will be reversed for higher management. And what exactly happens here? Self-managed teams create a work environment that stimulates people to become self-motivated. So besides speeding up decision making and innovation, the self-managed teams inspire the employees to connect with the company's vision in a very special way. So they see the company as the means by which they can affect key issues and even develop their leadership skills. So the self-managed teams, the team will dominate. It is not the team leader who will be dominating here. As you can understand, the more matured members in the team, so the decision will be taken by the team itself. So the self-managed team concept is very, very important. The functional team, what we understood, what it represents, grouping individuals by common skills and activities within the traditional hierarchical structure. Whereas self-directed teams or self-managed teams are members rather than leader-centered and directed. Right? So this is about the three types of teams. Now we'll try to understand the decision making in teams. See, when we speak about decision making in teams, as we discussed, some will be leader centered decision making, some will be team members who will be taking the decision, or some will be a participative style of taking the decision, some will follow autocratic style. So we'll try to understand the various decision making in teams. See, the uncertainty and the ambiguity and the ever changing circumstances of today's environment, it requires that leaders have the courage to make the difficult decisions. So we will try to understand the decision making in the context of the team, and which includes the advantages and the disadvantages of team decision making relative to decisions made by an individual leader, as well as the determinants of effective team decision and the leader's role in team decision. See, first we'll try to understand team versus individual decision making. I'm trying to tell you team versus individual decision making. See, when it comes to solving problems and making decisions, organizations have relied on both individuals and teams. So teams are preferred over individuals when relevant information and expertise are scattered among the different people, and when participation is needed to obtain necessary commitment, and when concentrating power in a single individual hurts the group. So using a particular group to make a decision under these type of circumstances has some of the advantages and disadvantages too. So before going to advantages and disadvantages, we'll try to understand the leader-centered decision-making model. See, in case of the leader-centered decision-making model, the leader exercises his or her power to initiate, direct, drive, instruct, and control the team members. So this focus on the leader points to some of the following prescriptions for success. So the leader here should focus on the task and ignore personal feelings and even relationships whenever possible. And even the leader should seek opinions and try to get agreement, but never relinquish the right to make final choices. And the leader should stay in control of the group discussion at all the times, and even should politely but firmly stop disruptive acts and irrelevant discussions. So you see, students, whenever you are a leader, you cannot hurt the sentiment of your team members. You should respect everybody's view. That is very important. Also, leader should be having a lot of patience. And the leader should discourage the members from expressing their feelings and should strive to maintain a rational, logical discussion without any emotional outbursts. And finally, the leader should guard against the threats to his or her authority in the group and should fight if necessary to maintain it. That's very important. He should always guard against any kind of threats to his team members. Always he should protect the interest of his team members. That's very important. And should always fight if necessary to maintain it. So, some of the advantages of this team, that is team decisions. Before going to this, team decisions. As I told you, since everyone is involved in decision making, that is advantages of team decisions. So what happens? It can improve the quality of the decision. Since the entire team is involved, so what happens when you are, see, you only just imagine if you are the team leader and if 20 people are reporting in that particular team to you, and if you are asking everybody about the decision for a particular project, then everyone will feel the importance of them working in that particular team, right? So what happens here? It can improve the decision quality when the problems and issues involve the participation of different functions. And very important thing is, you are making them to realize their responsibility. You are making them realize, to understand them how they are important to this particular project or team. And indirectly or directly, what you are doing here is, you are making them ensure that their commitment should be higher, and in turn they'll give more work to implement decisions as compared to decision made by alone by a manager, right? So you are making them aware, who your complete team members, you are making them aware how important is their decision, because you are going for a participative style. And some of the disadvantages are also there, which implies, see, whenever you are asking whenever you go for a participative style, the time taken would be longer, and it might even end up by a poor compromise rather than an optimal solution when the team members cannot agree among themselves about the team's objectives and priorities. And sometimes not necessarily better than those made by a single manager who has all of the relevant information and even the knowledge needed to make the decision. And in some cases, team decision will be completely inferior. So these are some of the major advantages and disadvantages of team decision. Next, we'll try to understand. So before going to leadership skills for effective team meetings, we'll try to understand leader-centered approach. I'm repeating once again, leader-centered approach. See, the leader exercises his or her power to initiate the direct drive, instruct and control the team members. It is nothing but autocratic style, what we studied earlier, right? So what used to happen over there, the leader will finally decide and inform the team members, and everyone should follow that. So the leader should focus on the task and ignore the personal feelings here. So after that, we will study the group-centered approach. So the group-centered approach empowers group members to make decisions and follow through. So here, in case of group-centered approach, the leader should listen attentively and observe the non-verbal cues to be aware of members' needs, feelings, interactions, and even conflict. And the leader should model appropriate leadership behaviors and encourage members to learn to perform this behavior themselves. The leader should even relinquish control to the group and allow the group to make the final choice in all appropriate kinds of decision. And finally, when we speak about the leadership skills for effective team meetings. So what is effective team meetings? That is very important. See, whatever information you are conveying to your team members should be effective. How to make it effective? With a group structure, managers spend a great deal of time in management meetings. So here, most meetings include employees, and it is common for teams to have daily meetings. So with the trend towards teams meetings are taking up an increasing amount of time. Therefore, the need for meeting management skill is stronger than ever. And students, very important here is the success of meetings depends on the leader's skill at managing the group process. And here what happens, some of the major or the success of meetings depends on the leader's skill. The most common complaints about the meetings are there are too many of them, or sometimes they are too long, or sometimes they are unproductive. So meeting leadership skills can lead to more productive meetings. Normally what happens, a small example, Ford Motor Company, they will spend nearly 5 lakh US dollars to send 280 employees to a 3-day training session with the 3 one-day sessions to follow. So after this particular training, fewer employees complained of meetings being too long or unproductive. See, some of the meetings, I think you have, some of the things what you will be encountering. Sometimes if it is too long, you feel too bored, or sometimes you feel that this meeting is unproductive. So the first important thing for a leader should he should plan the meeting in an effective way. So how to plan it? That's very important. A leader and member preparations for a meeting have a direct effect on the meeting. Please understand this. For any meeting you want to do with your team, you should have a clear agenda for that. And you should keep on addressing these agendas only. If you go beyond that, or outside the boundary, then the members who are there in the team will feel bored. They feel this meeting to be unproductive. So unprepared leaders, they tend to conduct unproductive meetings. That means meetings without any productivity. There is no meaning for that. And there are at least 5 areas in which planning is needed. That means, I told you, right? Objectives, a proper agenda should be there. Objectives, selecting participants and making assignments, the agenda, the time and the place for the meeting, and even the leadership. And very important, students, a written copy of the plan should be sent to members prior to the meeting, so that the people or the members who are attending a particular meeting should be knowing what exactly will be discussed in that particular meeting, and so that they can get prepared for that. Otherwise, you have called for a particular meeting and you are speaking something else. That means the members of the team will really feel this particular meeting to be unproductive. So you should only speak to the point what exactly or for what reason you have called for the meeting. See, when I say objectives here, see my cursor, objectives. Probably the single greatest mistake made by those who call meetings is that they often have no clear idea and the purpose for the meeting. So before calling a meeting, clearly define its purpose and even set objectives, whether why you have called that particular meeting, whether to increase the sales, or you have to increase the productivity, or you have to increase the quality of a product, or whether you have to increase the hiring. What is the reason why you have called for that meeting? So clearly define its purpose and set objectives to be accomplished during the meeting. The only exceptions may be at a regularly scheduled information dissemination or even brainstorming meetings. Then very important is participants. Here, selecting the participants, that's very important. See, when I say selecting participants, so before calling the meeting, decide who should attend the meeting first. Correct? The more members who attend a meeting, the less the chance that any work will get done. That's very important, right? And then agenda, that's what I'm telling you. Agenda is very, very important. So before calling the meeting, identify the activities that will take place during the meeting in order to achieve a objective. So the agenda tells the members what is expected and how the meeting will progress. See, it's very simple. You're calling a meeting, and initially you are discussing what is the agenda of this particular meeting, so that every member coming for the meeting will be prepared, mentally prepared. So having a set time limit for each agenda item helps keep the group on target. However, students, a leader or a team leader should be flexible and allow more time when they really needed. So place agenda items in order of priority. That's very important. It can be like the serious area of concern as a first priority, then it follows like that. So that way, if the group does not have time to cover every item, the least important items carry forward, can be brought to the next meeting. So that is very important about planning meetings. And even see here, the time and the place for the meeting is also very important. See, what happens here is, with advances in technology, telephone conferences, or even whatever we are doing, the Google Meet or the online meeting are becoming quite very common. See, what is happening here during this tough time of COVID, I cannot physically handle the session with you people. So because of the technology advancement, we are saving the time, and you will be delivered with the recorded videos too, right? So all of you should actually decide the date, time, and place if you're doing some physical meeting here. But please remember, you should go along with the time actually. You should see the scenario. So members tend to be more alert early in the day. That's very important. Early morning when the meeting is scheduled, everybody will be alert. But as the day proceeds, so what happens? Your energy level will come down. So you might not be so attentive. And keeping you all attentive in the meeting, it's a Herculean task. So when the members are close, it is better to have more frequent, shorter meetings focusing on one or just few items. Then after that, leadership, the last point here, see my cursor, leadership. See, the leader should determine the appropriate leadership style for the meeting. So each agenda item may need to be handled differently. For example, some items may simply call for disseminating information, and other requires a discussion or a vote or a consensus, while other items require a simple quick report from a member and so forth. So an effective way to develop group members' ability is to rotate the role of the group moderator or leader for each meeting. So this is how you can plan meetings, so that your meeting can be very effective in a very successful way, so that all the information can be conveyed to the team members if you plan well in advance. In the next class, we will try to understand conducting meetings. So, hope all of you have understood the concept, whatever we have discussed. I will end the session, students.